Listen to me carefully. If you're over 60, you've either aged into power or you've aged into irrelevance. There's no middle ground anymore. And the difference comes down to specific traits that should have crystallized in you by now if you've been paying attention to life. These aren't the traits that mattered when you were 30. This isn't about six-pack abs or flashy confidence or youthful energy. This is about traits that can only develop through decades of living, learning, failing, succeeding, and becoming a complete human being. But the rare man over 60 who's maintained or developed these traits, he's not just attractive for his age. He's more attractive than most younger men because he possesses qualities they literally cannot access. Yet, he's playing a completely different game. Today, I'm revealing the exact traits that make men over 60 magnetic to women. Not all women, women with depth, experience, and intelligence who recognize value when they see it. These traits can't be faked. They can only be earned through decades of conscious living. If you have these traits, women are noticing you in ways younger men can't understand. If you've lost them, it's time to reclaim them. Let's go. Trait 1. Unshakable calm in the face of chaos. The first trait women notice in men over 60 is whether you've achieved genuine calm that can't be disrupted by external chaos. Not numbness, not checking out, but deep-centered calm that comes from having weathered so many storms that turbulence no longer shakes you. This is something younger men cannot have. They haven't lived long enough. They haven't been through enough cycles of crisis and resolution to develop unshakable calm. They still react to everything. They're still emotionally volatile when challenged. But a man over 60 who's done the inner work, he's seen economic crashes and recoveries. He's been through relationship failures and successes. He's experienced health scares and healing. He's witnessed social upheavals and stabilizations. Nothing is shocking anymore because he's seen versions of everything before. This manifests as presence that's immediately noticeable. When chaos erupts around him, someone freaking out, plans falling apart, unexpected problems arising, he doesn't spike emotionally. His nervous system stays regulated, his voice stays calm, his thinking stays clear. Women notice this immediately because it's so rare and so attractive. Everyone's life contains chaos. Being around someone who doesn't add ADD to that chaos, but instead provides grounded stability in the midst of it, that's invaluable. This isn't about being emotionless or cold. It's about having emotional mastery through experience. You feel things, but you're not controlled by feelings. You can be present with emotion without becoming emotion itself. The 60-year-old who panics when plans change, who gets rattled by minor setbacks, who becomes emotionally reactive under pressure, has not developed this trait. He's aged without growing. Women see this, and it's pathetic at that age because calm should have developed naturally through life experience. But the 60-year-old who handles disruption with measured calm, who problem solves instead of panicking, who provides stability when everyone else is losing it, women gravitate toward that like gravity. It's safety, it's leadership, it's what they're desperately seeking in a partner. This trait signals I've been through worse than this and came out fine. This situation doesn't threaten me because I know from experience that most problems are temporary and manageable. That wisdom is magnetic. If you haven't developed this yet, the work is processing past trauma and anxiety through therapy, meditation, or other inner work, and consciously practicing non-reactivity when challenges arise. At your 60, you should have this. If you don't, it's your most important development target. Trait 2. Comfortable authority without arrogance. The second trait women notice is whether you've developed comfortable authority that comes from decades of competence without tipping into arrogance or needing to prove yourself. This is the sweet spot that younger men miss constantly. They're either trying too hard to demonstrate authority they don't have, or they're uncomfortable with any authority at all. Neither is attractive. But a man over 60 who truly knows his domain, who's genuinely expert at his craft, who's solved thousands of problems over decades, he carries authority comfortably. He doesn't need to announce it. He doesn't need to prove it. It's just evident in how he moves through the world. This shows up in how you speak about things. You know, you're not trying to impress anyone. You're not name-dropping credentials. You're just stating facts from experience with calm certainty. In my experience, this usually plays out like this. Not arrogant, just informed. It shows up in how you handle situations requiring leadership. You step up naturally without making a big deal about it. You make decisions when decisions are needed. You provide direction when direction is required. Not because you need to dominate, but because someone needs to lead and you're capable. Women notice this because real authority is incredibly rare and incredibly attractive. Most people are pretending, faking expertise they don't have, or refusing to claim expertise they do have because they're afraid of seeming arrogant. The man over 60 who's transcended both of these insecurities, who knows what he knows and is comfortable saying so while remaining open to being wrong. That's powerful. That's attractive. That's the authority that comes only from decades of actual experience. This trait also shows up in how you handle being challenged. Younger men get defensive when questioned because their authority is fragile. Men over 60 with real authority, they welcome questions because they're secure in their knowledge. They can say, "I don't know about things outside." Their expertise without feeling diminished. The contrast is stark. The 60-year-old who constantly needs to be the expert on everything, who can't admit gaps in knowledge, who gets defensive when challenged, is insecure despite his age. Women see this as pathetic because authority should be natural by now, not performed. But the 60-year-old who's clearly expert in specific domains, comfortable admitting what he doesn't know, and willing to learn from anyone regardless of age, that's attractive authority. That's confidence that only comes from decades of building real competence. This signals I know my value. I've proven it to myself thousands of times. I don't need to prove it to you. That certainty is magnetic because it's so rare and because it can't be faked. If you don't have this, the work is building genuine expertise in something that matters to you. Become truly skilled at your craft. Then practice owning that expertise without arrogance. At 60, you should be expert at something. If you're not, you've wasted your time. Trait 3, genuine curiosity about life and people. The third trait women notice is whether you've maintained genuine curiosity about life, learning, and other people, or whether you've become closed off and certain you know everything. This separates men who are aging with vitality from men who are dying slowly. Curious men are still engaged with life. Closed-off men are just waiting to die, even if their bodies are still functioning. Many men over 60 have stopped learning. They've decided they know what they need to know. They're not interested in new ideas, new experiences, or new perspectives. They've calcified. And women can feel this deadness immediately. But the rare man over 60 who's maintained curiosity, who still asks questions, who's genuinely interested in how things work and why people think the way they do, who's willing to challenge his own assumptions. That's alive, that's engaging, that's attractive. This shows up in conversation immediately. The curious man asks thoughtful questions and actually listens to answers. He's learning about you, not just waiting for his turn to talk about himself. He's genuinely interested in your perspective, even if it differs from his. It shows up in how he spends time. He's reading books that challenge him. He's trying new experiences. He's learning new skills. He's exploring ideas outside his comfort zone. His life is expansive rather than contracting. Women notice this because being around curious people is energizing. They expose you to new ideas. They make conversation interesting. They're engaged with the world in ways that make you want to engage more too. The contrast is being around men who've stopped growing. Same opinions they've had for 30 years. Same routine they've followed forever. Same stories on repeat. Same closed mind refusing new information that's exhausting and boring. The curious 60-year-old asks questions like, "What are you reading? What made you interested in that? How did you come to think that way? What am I missing about this?" He's genuinely interested in perspectives beyond his own. The closed-off 60-year-old already knows everything. He's not asking questions because he doesn't care about answers. He's lecturing rather than conversing. He's dismissing rather than exploring. Women feel this rigidity, and it's deeply unattractive. This trait signals I'm still growing. I'm still learning. I'm still engaged with becoming better rather than assuming I've arrived. That growth mindset at 60, is rare and magnetic because most people have stopped growing decades earlier. If you've lost curiosity, the work is deliberately exposing yourself to new ideas, people, and experiences. Read books outside your normal genre. Talk to people who disagree with you. Try activities you've never done. Force yourself back into beginner's mind. At 60, you should be wiser than ever, which means humble enough to know you don't know everything. Trait 4. Purposeful direction without desperation. The fourth trait women notice is whether you still have clear purpose and direction in your life without desperate need to prove yourself or achieve external validation. This is a difficult balance that most men at any age fail to strike. They're either drifting with no direction or they're frantically chasing achievement to prove their worth. Both are unattractive, but a man over 60 with genuine purpose, who knows what matters to him and pursues it without desperation, who has projects, goals, and direction while being at peace with where he is. That's the sweet spot that only age and wisdom can create. This shows up in how you talk about your days and your future. You have things you're working on that engage you, projects that matter, goals that excite you, but you're not frantic about them. You're not defining your worth by achievement. You're enjoying the pursuit itself. Maybe you're building something, creating something, teaching something, contributing something. The specific domain matters less than the fact that you have direction. You're not just killing time until you die. You're actively engaged in becoming and contributing. Women notice this immediately because purposeful men are attractive at any age, but especially attractive at 60 because purpose without desperation is so rare. Young men have purpose with desperation. Old men often have neither purpose nor desperation, just resignation. The 60-year-old who's still got purpose but has released the desperate need to prove himself through that purpose. That's evolved masculinity. That's what decades of living should produce. This trait also shows up in how you spend your time and energy. You're selective about commitments because you know what matters and what doesn't. You say no to things that don't align with your purpose. You're focused without being rigid. The contrast is the 60-year-old with no direction. Every day is the same. No goals, no projects, no engagement beyond basic routine. He's just existing, waiting for the end. Women feel this emptiness, and it's repulsive. Or the 60-year-old still desperately trying to prove himself, still defining his worth by external achievement, still needing validation from success, still not at peace despite decades of living. That's sad at 60 because peace should have arrived by now. This trait signals I know what matters to me. I'm engaged in pursuing it, but my worth isn't dependent on outcomes because I've learned that the pursuit itself is the reward. That wisdom creates attractive energy. If you don't have this, the work is getting clear on what actually matters to you at this stage of life. Then organizing your remaining years around pursuing that without attachment to specific outcomes. At 60, you should know what you're about. If you don't, figure it out now before you run out of time. Trait 5. Selective vulnerability and emotional depth. The fifth trait women notice is whether you've developed the ability to be selectively vulnerable and emotionally deep without being either completely closed off or emotionally incontent. This is advanced emotional intelligence that should develop with age but often doesn't. Most men at 60 have either walled themselves off emotionally after being hurt too many times, or they've become emotionally needy and oversharing because they have no one to process with. But the rare man who's achieved selective vulnerability, who can share genuine emotion and depth when appropriate while maintaining boundaries and not dumping on everyone, that's maturity. That's attractive. That's what women are seeking. This shows up in conversation. You can discuss real things, loss, fear, joy, meaning, without either shutting down or making it awkward through oversharing. You share appropriately based on context and depth of relationship. You can talk about your late wife or past relationships without being bitter or dwelling in the past. You can acknowledge pain you've experienced without being defined by it. You can express joy and enthusiasm without being performative about it. Women notice this because emotional depth with appropriate boundaries is incredibly rare, especially in men, and especially in older men who've often armored themselves against feeling to avoid pain. The emotionally available 60-year-old who can cry at meaningful moments without shame, who can express love and appreciation clearly, who can share fears and doubts with trusted people. That's strength, not weakness. Women recognize this immediately. But the 60-year-old who's completely shut down emotionally, who can't cry even at funerals, who never shares anything real, who keeps everything surface level, that's terrifying to women because it suggests you're either dead inside or so damaged you can't access your own humanity. Or the 60-year-old who overshares constantly, who dumps emotional baggage on near strangers, who makes everything about his pain and trauma. That's exhausting because it shows zero boundaries or self-awareness. The selective vulnerability shows up in timing and appropriateness. First date, you're open but not oversharing. 10th date, you're sharing deeper truths. Year into relationship, you're comfortable, being fully seen. The vulnerability deepens appropriately as trust builds. This trait signals, I've felt deeply, I've been hurt, I've loved, I've lost, I've processed it all. I can share this with appropriate people in appropriate contexts. But I'm not desperate for someone to fix me or carry my emotional weight. That's maturity. If you don't have this, the work is therapy or other deep emotional processing to heal past wounds and develop capacity for healthy emotional expression. At 60, you should be emotionally literate. If you're not, it's urgent work because time is limited. Trait 6, comfortable with your mortality. The sixth trait women notice, especially in men over 60, is whether you've made peace with your mortality or whether you're in desperate denial about aging and death. This might sound dark, but it's actually one of the most attractive traits an older man can possess. The man who's looked at death, accepted it, and decided to live fully. In the time he has left, radiates a different energy than the man terrified of aging. This shows up in how you talk about age and time. You acknowledge you're 60 without trying to pretend you're 40. You reference the reality that you have limited years left without being morbid. You make plans for your remaining time with intentionality. You're not frantically trying to look younger through obvious plastic surgery or ridiculous clothing. You're not pretending you have unlimited time. You're not in denial about your body's changes. You've accepted reality and made peace with it. Women notice this because the energy of acceptance is calm and powerful, while the energy of denial is desperate and pathetic. The man comfortable with mortality lives more fully because he knows time is finite. The man in denial wastes time fighting reality. This trait also shows up in how you prioritize. You're not wasting time on things that don't matter because you know you don't have time to waste. You're selective about commitments. You focus on what and who truly matters. This clarity is attractive. The 60-year-old who's made peace with mortality says things like, "At my age, I don't have patience for drama." Or, "Life's too short to spend time with people who drain you." Or, "I'm focusing on what matters now." This wisdom comes from accepting finitude. The 60-year-old in denial is either silent about age, pretending it's not happening, or constantly trying to prove he's still young through behavior that looks ridiculous at his age. Neither is attractive. Both signal fear. The Stoics were obsessed with remembering mortality. Memento mori, not to be depressed, but to live fully. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself he would die to motivate himself to make the most of each day. That's the model. This trait signals I know I'm closer to the end than the beginning. This focuses me on what matters. I'm not wasting my remaining time. I'm living intentionally with the years I've left. That urgency without desperation is magnetic. If you're in denial about mortality, the work is contemplating death not morbidly, but as motivation to live well. Read Stoic philosophy. Consider how you want to spend your remaining years. Make peace with the reality that time is limited. At 60, you're in the fourth quarter. Play it accordingly. Do this work and watch how women respond differently to you. Not all women. The shallow ones still focused on surface will pass you by. But women with depth, intelligence, and emotional maturity, they'll notice you immediately because these traits are exactly what they're seeking and rarely finding. Your age is either your greatest advantage or your greatest liability. It becomes an advantage when these 6 traits have developed through your decades of living. It remains a liability when you've aged without growing. The choice. has always been yours. What you do with your remaining time determines whether you age into power or irrelevance. These traits are the markers of power. Develop them or fade into the background of men who wasted their years. Now you know what women notice. The question is, do you have it? And if not, are you willing to do the work to develop it before it's too late?